Hello, today is Wednesday, August 5th. We have the pleasure of having Vinny Magliulo, VP of Las Vegas Dissemination Company, Gaughan Sports Gaming Director, and a VSiN Oddsmaker co-host. Vinny, welcome and thanks.
Great to be with you, Howard. Always enjoy your podcast. Look forward to being with you today.
We appreciate it. Vinny, many people in Las Vegas sports betting circles know your background, but for GT listeners and subscribers outside of town, give us a quick bio of where you're from, how you got to Las Vegas and got into this business.
Yeah, so when I was 14 years old, I had a couple of uncles, including my godfather, who lived here in Las Vegas. I grew up in the New York metropolitan area, and my parents gave me a choice when I was getting ready to go to high school. They said, "You want to go to basketball camp or you want to go to Vegas to see your godfather?" I said, "Well, they have basketball camps in Las Vegas. I got a guy named Tarkanian out there. I'm going to Vegas." So at 14 years old, I came and spent the summer here in Las Vegas and fell in love with the city. And at that time, things were smaller. It was a much closer knit in terms of restrictions and things like that, Howard. So I would go everywhere with my uncle. And again, he was a musician at the time. And here I am at 14 years old. I was the cute little nephew. I was hanging out backstage. I was in meeting entertainers. For my mom, I have to repeat this story, even though she still cringes at it. Wound up backstage at a couple of burlesque shows, simply helping set up and things like that. My uncle's drums, nothing else.
Or research as a teenager.
That's right. Well, listen, and of course, I was always in love with gambling. I mean, there was card games at my relatives' homes all the time. My aunts and my grandmothers, especially, were dangerous with a deck of cards. Grew up around the racetrack. First time I went to a racetrack, I was 8 years old with my Uncle Tony. And of course, you having grown up in that part of the country as well, it was always references to odds in whether it was the Daily News or the New York Post. And so, and let's face it, New York at that time, there were some great sports stories and great odds stories. The Miracle Mets in 1969, the Jets as 19-point favorites in Super Bowl III against the Colts. The Knicks wound up winning the 1970 championship, and the New York Rangers, the hockey team at the time, made it to the Stanley Cup semis. So, I mean, it was always front and center in terms of sports and gambling. So I fell in love with it. Plus, I went to Catholic school, so part of the parochial education, as you know, is fundraising. And every fundraiser we had was gambling related. We had raffles, we had Vegas nights, we had bingo and everything. So it was around me all the time. So at 14 years old, when I came to Las Vegas, I made a decision at that time. I'm going to go back to New York. I'm going to go to high school. I'm going to do junior college, and which is what I did. And in 1978, I transferred to UNLV, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, and then did you start out like most traditional bookmakers as a ticket writer and then work your way through the system?
Actually, a little bit of a different route, Howard. It's a good question because my first job was working for Michael Gaughan and Frank Toti at the Royal Inn, which was a small casino on Convention Center Drive between Las Vegas Boulevard and Paradise Road, just up the street from what is now the Westgate. And Resorts World is now being built on the other side, on Las Vegas Boulevard side. So Michael Gaughan and Frank Toti had a dealing school. So while I was going to UNLV during the day, I was going to dealing school at night, and I was learning how to deal table games. And I chose dice because it was the most difficult game. And if you could deal dice, then you could deal any game. So for the first 6 years of my career, I actually was a croupier. I was a casino dealer, and worked my way up to boxman, floorman, and things like that. And right, sports books. There weren't that many sports books at the time, particularly on Las Vegas Boulevard. Back when, right after I broke in, a few months later, I broke in 1970, in November of 1978. And a few months later, Michael Gaughan opened the Barbary Coast, which is now the Cromwell, and I was there on opening night, March 2nd. 1979, and it was only the third sports book on Las Vegas Boulevard. The Stardust had the first. The Castaways down the street had the second, and Michael Gaughan opened the Barbary Coast with the third sports book on the Strip. Jimmy Vaccaro was ran the sports book, and so Michael also had what I consider to be the first cross-training program in the gaming industry. And it had no name, it had no official title, it had no manual. It was simply this: make sure you are proficient, you are good at what I hired you for, then go learn whatever you want.
You know what it had, Vinny? It had intention.
Absolutely, and direction, and it had opportunity, and so you had the opportunity to really learn all aspects of not only the gaming industry but the hotel and casino operation. So where was I on every break? I was in the sports book, hanging out with my buddies, Jimmy Vaccaro, Chris Andrews, the director at the South Point hotel presently. I met him there. Art Manteris from Station Casinos, Johnny Avello from DraftKings, and many others during that are currently in the business met there at the Barbary Coast. And so once the Barbary Coast opened, and then of course Caesar's Palace, the Dunes, the MGM, which is now Bally's, all those properties did not have a book. All their customers were coming over to the Barbary Coast. They realized they had to put in a sports book. Sports books also began to proliferate not only up and down Las Vegas Boulevard, but all over the state. And it became an industry that needed qualified management. So I had the opportunity to learn from some of the best, as I mentioned. Like I said, Jimmy Vaccaro, all the other guys that I mentioned here, Christian, we were all friends. Jack Franzi was the odds maker at the Barbary Coast, taught me a lot of things. So the other part that came into play, Howard, was, as you know, the gaming tax, the federal tax, I should say, on sports wagers was lowered in the mid 80s to where its present percentage is now at 0.25%. So all these factors came into play, and I got a call from Jimmy Mastriani, who opened Foxwoods in 1992. He's a dear friend of mine, and Jimmy Vaccaro's cousin. He said, listen, he was at Caesar's Palace with Lou D'Amico, and Lou wanted to meet me. I went over there in the summer of 1986, and he hired me, and I've been in the race and sports book ever since.
And how long was your stint at Caesars? Because that was a special book when it opened.
Yeah, it was. I have to say that the time I spent at Caesars from 1986 until 2000 was an exceptional time. Obviously, all of the great events, particularly the boxing events, were legendary. And those were events that not only really put the property in the sports spotlight, Howard, but those events transcended the energy and the excitement, transcended the entire city. And so I had the opportunity to work there during what I consider to be certainly, many people consider the golden age of sports here in Las Vegas. It was a special time. I met a lot of great people and had a terrific staff, and really launched a lot of things for me down the road, including once that merger took place and I had left Caesars in 2000. I came to work for John Gaughan here at Las Vegas Dissemination for a couple of years. And then I was working as a consultant for Steve Wynn on Wynn Las Vegas, that project. And that turned into, he said, well, listen, about what are you thinking about doing? I said, well, I enjoy working on this project. He says, well, this was my interview with Steve Wynn. This is exactly how it took place. He says, you were at Caesars for a long time, right? He goes, well, I had Vaccaro. I said, yeah. He goes, you guys are buddies, right? I said, yeah, we're very close. So he goes, yeah, Caesars. So what do you think about this project that we got going here? And of course, this is where the Desert Inn is still standing there, but it's being dismantled as we're talking out back. And so I said, well, Mr. Wynn, I believe this is a project that's going to not only raise the bar, but set the bar, and for all of Las Vegas, certainly revitalize the entire north end of the Strip. He goes, I know all of that, but tell me what you really think. I I said, well, if you really want to know, I said, you probably need a bookie named Vinny from Brooklyn to run your operation. He says, I love that. You start tomorrow. That was my
That's great.
interview with Steve Wynn.
That's great. My friends all from back east, they say, is this the sixth New York family? Because there's names like Avello and Magliulo and all these names, D'Amico. And I said, no, they're just good guys that know how to make odds.
That's right. It's in our blood. I mean, that's what we do.
Right.
But
Hey,
it's I have to tell you, Howard, it's a very close knit fraternity, and certainly, actually, and I should say this too, frankly, a bit, there's a sorority aspect to it also, because there are some great ladies
yes, there
that
are.
have through the years, including, and I include Eileen Derocco in this because of her relationship to the industry in terms of promoting the
Right.
industry for so many years with Chuck, the founder of Gaming Today, Yolanda Acuna, who's been with Mirage, MGM Mirage Resorts for a very long time. Rest in peace. There were several others. Catherine Mannix, one of the sharpest bookmakers I ever saw in terms of booking a horse race. Catherine was second to none. So it's a very special part of the industry that I'm very proud to be a part of.
Yeah. You mentioned before Las Vegas Dissemination Company. Can you explain to our listeners what that company does exactly and how it's a
Sure.
vital lifeline for horse players in Las Vegas?
Yeah, it's an important lifeline. It provides the vital link, Howard, for race bettors here in the state of Nevada and several other locations throughout the country to for bettors to be able to walk up to a sportsbook counter. So if someone walks up to the counter at the South Point and makes a race wager, Las Vegas Dissemination Company makes it possible for that money to go directly into the pools at the various tracks, say Del Mar or Saratoga
A
right now.
merchant
And
account, a facilitator.
absolutely. So providing that link for yourself, you come up to the counter, you make a wager, your money goes directly into the pools, and you get paid exactly what you would as though you were at the track. By the way, the company owned by John Gaughan, oldest son of Michael Gaughan, and founded the company in 1988, and has had that link has had the agreement with the state since the inception of parimutuel wagering in 1991. Let's remember, prior to 1991, and for my early years in the business, Howard, races were booked in house. They were booked just like sports bets were. And
here's some irony, Vinny.
Yeah.
And we'll get to Chuck in a minute. We'll tell some stories about him. He was responsible for bringing the first horse signal to Las Vegas, the founder of Gaming Today, Chuck Derocco.
Yes, he did. He was one of the first signal disseminators here in the state. Tracks Bowie Racetrack in Maryland, I believe, certainly was one of the early signals. So now it's become absolutely necessary and standard for bettors here in the state of Nevada to be able to walk up to a counter and bet a horse race as though they were right at the track. So simulcasting and commingling have been a mainstay, as I mentioned, since 1991. And John Gaughan, to his credit, had the foresight to do that.
So speaking of the Gaughans, they're one of those historic,
Yes.
iconic casino pioneering families. You worked in other environments like Caesars and such. How is it working with this unique family and group of people?
Yeah, and I have to tell you, so Michael Gaughan, again, just an absolute visionary and hands-on. I enjoyed very much my time in the corporate environment at Caesars while I was there for those 14 years. Certainly at Wynn, with Steve was very much in control and had oversight and made quick decisions. But the thing working for the Gaughan family. And whether it's, you look at, and you'll hear this from Jimmy Vaccaro and Chrissy Andrews at the South Point working for Michael Gaughan, here at Las Vegas Dissemination Company working for John Gaughan. There's a decision made right away. Things get talked about. We spend more time actually on operational issues, and and resolving things as quickly as possible, and you get a decision right away. So again, I'm not going to criticize the corporate structure, but you've got to understand that there's a difference between the two, and so having decisions made very quickly certainly gets you right back to operating much quicker. So to that end, it's been quite a contrast, but also valuable in terms of learning, because I can tell you that being here working for John Gaughan, or being involved, with South Point and Michael's influence through so many years, you understand the relationship too between ownership, a single ownership compared to a corporate entity, and it certainly benefited my career.
I was in the restaurant business for 25 years before this, and my father and I were partners, so I'm very familiar with quick decisions and pivoting. And same at gaming today. We're small
Yeah.
and we're nimble, and our owner, publisher, Bill Paulos, is very similar to the Gaughans in that respect, in that, we had several casinos, Las
Yeah.
Vegas based, and everything was done through he and his partner, Bill Wortman. They made decisions on the fly, and they did what was best for the business. There were no big board meetings or shareholder meetings. It was just done.
Yeah, and I think that to those gentlemen who I've had the pleasure of meeting, and listen, understanding as many dynamics as possible, I think really helps individuals. It certainly has helped me to understand various opinions and then make better decisions, and really is best for business. If you can have those types of relationships, then I think it only enhances not only your experience, but helps make your company better.
Right. All right, so let me go back to Chuck for a minute. Chuck Derocco was the founder of Gaming Today back in 1976.
Mm-hmm.
He was really an innovator and way ahead of his time, and he was a larger-than-life guy in many ways. And before there was Twitter and before there was Norm Clark, he was the real scoop guy. He had a line into all of the casino bosses and executives, and he would, every week in a column, give the gaming scoop, what was happening in the industry,
Yes.
what mergers might take place, who was doing what behind the scenes, before the internet and before any of that. You have a great story about Chuck, who was actually a pretty big gambler himself at Caesar's Palace,
Yeah.
coming to a Kentucky Derby party in one of their ballrooms.
Yeah, Chuck was, this is a marketing story. He was a brilliant marketer, and those sources he had referred to as pipes. One of
And
my
moles.
pipes, I hear it from a very reliable pipe. But here was Chuck's marketing stuff, who I absolutely love, and I would just, he would leave you always with a smile, and you just go, boy, I got to tell you, this is vintage Chuck. By the way, you mentioned a very good casino customer. The only customer that I can recall in the history of Caesar's Palace who actually would he would ask for and get bananas of all things on the 21 table.
Blackjack table. Yes. Eileen told me that.
I'm thinking, whatever it was superstition. I'd like some bananas. You walk out and you'd be playing, and there's like a bunch of bananas sitting there. So Chuck, one day, of course, we always had various special events at Caesar's Palace during the course of the year. We always had a Super Bowl party in the ballrooms, the ballroom section overlooking the fountains at Caesar's Palace, and a Kentucky Derby party. And of course, at the time, the president of Caesar's World was Terry Lanny, and Terry was a horse owner, very fond of the Derby in particular, and good friends with Chuck. So Chuck calls me one week before a Derby, and he says, "Hey Vinny, I think I'm calling. Do you need some extra gaming today's with the Derby issue, because the Derby issue was a special edition?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Chuck, I already I ordered a couple of hundred extra. He says, "But don't you think you need some more?" And I said, "Well, I've got about 1,000 of them. I said, I think we're good." He says, "Okay." So I leave it at that. And now we get to the weekend, and it's Derby time. So at the time, the book at Caesar's Palace the Race and Sportsbook was on the complete opposite end of the property of the ballroom area that I'm referring to for this special event. So I would go back and forth. Well, outside of the entrance to the ballroom itself, we had a temporary gaming control board approved casino area. So we had betting windows for the race itself. Anybody who wanted to bet sports, and then there was a dice table and 321 tables as well. So we had a mini casino out there. So as I'm walking in there, I get to the counter. I turn, and now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to walk into the ballroom, into the party to go say hello to the guests and see how everything is going. And I see one of our housekeepers like laboring with a cart, and he's pushing the cart, and it's stacked. It had to be another 1,000 copies of Gaming Today, and you know how you bundle them, right? And here's
They're
this
bundled
guy
in hundreds.
He's like one of the old Egyptians, getting the pyramids built. I'm like, what? I said, wait a minute, there's a whole stack over here on the tape. He goes, no, I have to bring these inside to Mr. Lanny. And I said, wait a minute, who? He's Mr. I walk in, there's Chuck sitting at the first table with Terry Lanny, and he's just smiling. He goes, Vinny, I brought your extra Gaming Todays. I said, thanks, Chuck.
You got that bill, too, that you had to approve.
Oh, well, naturally, the invoice came, and I said, yeah. So probably the record for the a record number of Gaming Todays for a single week at a particular property. But
The
that was
staff
Chuck.
had plenty of paper if they had to move and you know,
Brilliant marketer. Trust me, he was great. I loved him.
That's great. That's fantastic. Vinny, you've always been a huge proponent of the Nevada model of booking sports. And since PASPA has passed, we're seeing hypergrowth across the country and different ways to go to market. Nevada's model, always intended to drive bodies to the brick and mortar resorts and local casinos. Between the business changing with emphasis on apps and now the COVID issue, what do you foresee in the next few years?
Yeah, when I say the Nevada model, I mean, obviously, I'm certainly familiar with it, Howard. I think there's a lot that we can learn here in our jurisdiction from other jurisdictions, other things that are happening. I mean, the fact that now sports has become more mainstream, right? I mean, for a long time, we had the market. We had the corner on the market for illegal sports wagering in the country. So we've had to make some adjustments, and I think there's some things that we can learn. So one of them is, I think, one wallet, if you will. So, in other jurisdictions, you're able to have an app, an account, whereby you can make sports wagers, and you can also make race wagers where they're approved. And so I think one wallet is certainly not only the way to go, but there is a regulatory language being crafted right now that will translate into there's legislative language that will translate into regulatory language and make that possible. So I think that's something that we've learned, and I think it's time
It's
has
logical.
come. Yeah, I mean, it's convenient for you as a bettor, and frankly, from our side of the counter, I think it will promote more handle, even if it's simply impulse buying. I mean, if you're watching a ball game at night and you're making in progress wagers, the fact, if we send a signal and says, hey, by the way, the feature race at Los Al is coming up here, you may be inclined to do that. So I think that time has come, and that's an adjustment. I also think that given the current environment of things, particularly you mentioned the COVID situation, never before had we seen where casinos on a statewide level ever had to close and for an extended period of time. And once that happened, South Point, I thought, did a creative thing, and that was where we opened the Porte Cochure for people to drive up and then set up accounts, mobile accounts, and also fund those accounts.
It was very clever.
And some other folks did it, which, again, listen, if it works, if it's good for one, it's good for the industry. And so what we've seen as a result of that is kind of twofold. You've seen more folks wagering now on apps and becoming more familiar and comfortable with doing so. But I think also because of now professional sports coming back, thankfully, the four major sports in particular, basketball, hockey, baseball, and we'll get to football coming up this fall, Howard. You're seeing folks participate more in game, so in progress wagering. Why? Well, I think professional bettors look at that and say, I want to make sure who's playing and evaluate how games are proceeding. But also for the casual fans, you're finding the folks saying, "Wow, I like this. I have an opportunity to either augment my wager or maybe change the way I'm thinking and get creative. Maybe I have an opportunity to win both sides of a particular event depending on how a contest is going." So the response has been very good, and I think that the wagering menu has expanded as well. I mean, think about it. So you're seeing more soccer booked now, more international soccer. Golf has really, we saw golf growing before the COVID situation, but now
Right.
even more so. So a lot of sports have seen an increase, and I think what it's created is sort of a niche market for a lot of bettors. Because from our side of the counter, you have to put just about everything up, right? You've got this huge menu, but you as a bettor, you can zero in on a particular sport, or even on a particular conference or a particular
Right.
team or teams within a sport that you can specialize on. And I think we're seeing more of that.
Right. But the intention originally with sportsbooks was to drive people into the casino. That's going to
Yeah.
change, obviously. That going forward, that whole intention will
Mhm.
change.
Yeah, I think so first and foremost, from our perspective, and again, I'll go back to learning under the tutelage of Michael Gaughan. We're a complete resort. I mean, this is a complete resort experience to us. Yes, we work in the race and sports book, Howard, but that's part of the overall experience. And I remember Terry Lanny, again, may he rest in peace, always used to tell us, you know what, we're not in the gambling business, we're in the entertainment business. Steve Wynn used to say that as well. We're in the entertainment. We want people to enjoy the complete resort experience. Now, I'm not knocking anybody that says, hey, listen, we have a sports operation and that's first and foremost. That's great, and that works for some folks. But I think it's important to remember how the book relates to the overall experience, because you don't want somebody to come in and just have a good experience in the book. You want them to have a good experience on the
Sure.
casino floor, the slots. You want a good dining experience, entertainment experience, and enjoy the amenities throughout the property. So I think that that I still think that that's going to be something that is at the forefront of our industry, and certainly in Las Vegas. Now, obviously, we're on the comeback trail, and we've had challenges in the past. This one is unique, but it's certainly something that I'll always maintain. Bet on Las Vegas.
Sure. Sure. Last question, Vin.
Mhm.
How much fun are you having with the VSiN gig?
VSiN, I have to tell you, Howard, VSiN has been a great joy, and I'll give you a synopsis of it. I'll go back to my days at Caesars. So we had many fights, but there was a fight in particular that that triggered a thought to me at the time, and it was in April of 1987. It was Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard, and the build-up and the excitement for that fight, like so many others, was just phenomenal. I mean,
Took years to put together.
oh yes, because
Sugar Ray
finding
went into retirement.
he went in retirement, he came out of retirement. Marvin Hagler, where would the fight be? And it was bidding on the fight, of course, and who was going to promote the fight, how it was going to be promoted, the dates, and the judges, the referee, all the above. So
Right.
the fight happens at Caesar's Palace, and there was so much media coverage, Howard, and not just the ESPNs of the world. There was just international coverage, and every network as well. They had remote platforms throughout the property doing cutaways to Caesar's Palace on fight. So I got this idea, and I went to Lou D'Amico and I said, Lou, listen, I think we got an opportunity here. Why don't we put together a weekly show from the book here and incorporate all aspects of the property. Whoever's in the showroom can do a bit. And Al Bernstein was I said, look, have Al at the time, and that's how far back we go with Al.
Love Al.
Dude does a great job to this day with boxing. Enjoy Al very much. So he could host a show. We could do it from the book. You know, remember that Lee Pete had the Stardust show for years. He was with Bob Martin down at the Plaza for year before that, and it was a 50,000 watt station. I said, listen, we could do something great thing. So Lou was like, yeah, let's. So we went and we pitched it, and the company just, again, it's something that just got, I guess, put on the back burner for years. Well, 30 years later, I get a phone call from a young man by the name of Brian Musburger, Brent Musburger's nephew, and we hit it off. He had an idea to put together a sports betting network, and prior to that, we were broadcasting on one of the Discovery channels, Velocity, from 2011 to 13, a show called The Line Makers. And again, it was several of us from the industry, Jimmy Vaccaro, Richie Baccelari, Kenny White, myself, Ricky Herron, rest in peace, who was at the Barbary Coast with us and the Sands for years. Anyway, we broadcast that show from there. Brian Blessing, who still has a show today here in town. So we were broadcasting there. Brian Musburger saw that. He goes, "Boy, I think we could expand this." And I said, "I agree with you." So we had breakfast one day, Jimmy Vaccaro, Brian Musburger, and I. We said, "Yeah, we'll. There's only one." I said, "There's one place that I would take, and it's the South Point." I said, "We'll have an answer right away." So Jimmy Vaccaro and I walked into Michael Gaughan's office, and I'll never forget. I have to get a little prop here. So Michael Gaughan's sitting at his desk, and he looks up at us over his reading glasses, and he shakes his head, and he goes, "Now what are you two up to?" So we pitch him this great idea, like we're brilliant, right? Listen, we think that you should relocate about 50 plus slot machines off the casino floor and build a studio so
Genius.
we can do this sports betting show. And he just looked at us. He goes, "Move about 50 slot machines." So we laugh.
Right, you weren't messing with any good formula or anything.
Like, no algorithms here. It's like, hey, Michael, you know what? Whether PASPA, and it was being reviewed at the time, I said, listen, whether PASPA is overturned or not, the South Point will be the point of reference for legal sports wagering throughout North America. And he got it. He said, "Go in, see Ryan, start moving on it." Took 7 minutes, and that was it. And
goes back to our discussion earlier about getting decisions made.
And again, I mentioned so many great gaming people that I've worked with over the years, but here I get to sit next to one of the legendary broadcasters in history, Brent Musburger, who, I mean, I sit there and every time I'm with him, I learn something. And
what kind of trip is that? You were a kid listening to him.
I mean, I've listened to so many events of his, and he used to come in. He was a customer, and that's how. And we always knew too, when Brent was broadcasting a game, he would always make that reference. He would make two references. The
first game isn't over.
The first one was during the NFL when he said, "You're looking live." And the camera would always pan back to see what the weather was like, because he couldn't say the point spread on
right.
CBS. He couldn't make a reference to the over and under, but it would be like, "Oh, wait a second, man, is that really snowing? Is that right?" This is pre-internet stuff and everything. And then when there were college games going on at Caesar's Palace, and my guys in the desert tell me that wasn't just a meaningless touchdown, even though the game is out of reach and things like that. So Jimmy Vaccaro, myself, Chrissy Andrews, we were his guys in the desert. Of course, that's the name of his show, My Guys in the Desert. Just a great ambassador of our industry and a big proponent of it. And it's a lot of fun being next to him and looking forward to this upcoming football season. This will be our fourth year. This VSiN is 3.5 years old, so it's been a lot of fun, and we look forward to this coming football season.
Yeah, Brian and Bill and the team at VSiN has done a great job. It's not easy. It's a crowded space, for sure.
Oh yeah, but you know what? They had the foresight to have the idea. They reached out to us and put it together. It's been a joy, certainly something that I'm very proud of as a, a co-creator, if you will, and working with those guys. And again, Michael had the foresight to say, you know what, get the industry involved. And so, and as you know, on VSiN, there are spots done from around the industry, around the country.
Yes.
And so, and again, I go back to to that closeness of the industry. And I tell you what, it's a lot of fun, and on a daily basis, you're getting accurate, credible information on an aspect of not just entertainment and gaming, but our society that continues to grow. And you know what? It's a nice diversion too for people during these times.
Sure. It's growing that new buzzword, the ecosystem of sports
Yeah,
betting.
that's
You
right.
hear that a lot.
That's right. And so around the country, and VSiN will have various platforms, not just here in Nevada, but around the country, and continues to grow. So I think that, and again, frankly, we've been able to broadcast throughout these months. Don't forget when there was nothing happening, everything from ping pong to Japanese and Korean baseball in the middle of the night, certainly created more interest in the sports that did come back before the big four. Golf we mentioned earlier, but UFC action has been the greatest since UFC started came onto the scene. The handle on UFC, soccer, NASCAR, and golf is 3 to 5 times what it was before the COVID situation.
So is the horse racing handles. The handles
Yeah.
at the tracks with no people on track have been staggering.
And there's days, Howard, like that the race handle is up 30%. So and again, people want that. Let's remember this. The thing about sports wagering, one of the unique aspects of it, there's a lot of camaraderie in sports. You could get a room full of people, and you can get a group of 10, and they're on. They've got 10 different parlay cards, let's say, or you're not going to have everybody on the same side, but there's that social aspect of not just sports, but the betting on sports. And again, it's the ultimate segment of gaming where you put your money where your mouth is, right? Listen, not only am I a fan, but I think my team's going to win, and not only are they going to cover, but they're going to win. So, I mean, you look at the Nets game yesterday. The Nets 19 and a half point underdogs in their game yesterday against the Bucks. They come out and win the game outright.
Plus 1,500 on the money line.
Yeah, and that's the biggest upset in the NBA since 1993.
Right.
So, but there's always that possibility there, and that ring that people reach for is very enticing, and we're happy to provide it for them.
That's great. Hey, Vinny, let me wrap up with this.
Sure.
I have to thank you personally for supporting Gaming Today through the years in your journey. I also am so pleased to have gotten to know you better because I've moved from a different industry into this industry, and I've made great friends. And I feel like I've known you and Chris and Jimmy and Art and Johnny Avello and all these folks for so long. It just feels like one big fraternity, like you said. And we really appreciate the support. We appreciate the support of the Gaughan family. They're great partners. And I can't ask for more. Thank you.
Well, it's our privilege and pleasure, and you're part of that fraternity, Howard. I've been a big supporter and fan of Gaming Today ever since I got into the industry in 1978, and will continue to be. Gaming Today's really a focuses on our industry and spreads that word throughout the world, not just throughout the country now. So I'm looking forward to continuing to have this relationship, this rapport. I have a lot of good friends over there, yourself included. Like I said, my time goes back to Chuck and Eileen when they've always been good to me, and certainly you can count not only on my support, but the support of everyone involved with the Gaughans. So you know that, and we're looking forward to the future. And like I said, keep betting on Las Vegas.
We will. And also thanks from our editor, Steve Karp, and publisher, Bill Paulus.
Oh, they're the greatest. I love, Steve and I go back a long time. Steve used to cover me when I was at Caesars. I love Steve. Got to meet Mr. Paulus on several times, both professionally and casually. And again, he had the vision to take the paper to another level with folks like Steve, with folk like yourself, and the rest of your staff. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Vinny. Appreciate it. Be well.
Take care, Howard. Best to you and all the readers out there.
Thanks.